I knew the night was going to be bad before the front door even closed behind us. Something about the air in that place hit me wrong, thick with sweat, stale beer, and something else I couldn't name but didn't trust. The kind of smell that clung to your clothes and followed you home, even after a long shower. Neon signs buzzed over the bar, casting a sickly blue glow over everyone's faces, turning smiles into sneers. My boots stuck to the floor like the whole building was trying to hold me back. And maybe it should have. She didn't wait for me. She never really did anymore. As soon as we crossed the threshold, she was gone, weaving through the crowd with the kind of confidence I remembered from when we first met, back when it was charming. Back when that fire was directed at me, not away from me. Her heels clicked against the floor with purpose, the hem of her dress catching the light every time she turned her hips just enough to remind people she knew they were watching. I followed, but I wasn't part of it. I felt like a shadow, the plus one, the afterthought, the guy holding her purse at the edge of the dance floor, metaphorically speaking. She had picked the place, said we needed to do something different, that our routine had become a little too much of a routine, and maybe going out, just the two of us, would spark something again. I agreed, because what else was I supposed to do? Say no and look like the guy who doesn't try? The guy who let the spark die and didn't bother to relight it? We used to have fun, you know. Back in the early days, we'd stay up all night in bars just like this one, laughing at nothing, dancing badly, taking blurry pictures we'd delete the next morning. But this wasn't that. Not even close. From the second we walked in, it felt like I was watching a rerun of someone else's life. She was already looking around before we even hit the bar, eyes flitting from face to face, smiling just a little too long at a few strangers. There was a way she tilted her head, the subtle flick of her hair over her shoulder. It wasn't casual. It was deliberate. I trailed behind her like a dog on a leash, one hand in my jacket pocket, the other rubbing the back of my neck like I could massage the unease out of my skin. I didn't belong there, or maybe I just didn't belong with her there. Hard to tell the difference at that point. She leaned over the counter, flagging the bartender with that too familiar smile she saves for strangers she wants something from. Not the smile she gives me anymore. She ordered something fancy, some cocktail with too many syllables, then turned to me without even looking, muttering, "You want a beer or something?" Like I was an obligation. Like I was someone she had to keep fed and watered until she found a better distraction. I nodded, said sure, and let her order it, feeling smaller than I wanted to admit. We took our drinks to a booth in the corner, but she didn't sit next to me. She slid in across the table, her eyes scanning the room like she was waiting for someone, or expecting someone. The thought hit me hard. I didn't say it out loud, but it sank into my chest like a weight. "So," I said after a long silence, trying to make conversation, trying to pretend this was normal. "Glad we came out?" She shrugged. "It's different. Different." That's all she said. Like that made it better. Like, different was what we needed instead of honest or real or together. I watched her sip her drink, lips pursed around the straw like she was trying to get drunk fast. Like she needed a head start on whatever story she was about to write tonight. I don't know how long we sat like that. 5 minutes, maybe 10, her glued to the atmosphere and me glued to her, wondering when she'd finally acknowledge the look on my face. But she didn't. She was already pulling out her phone, texting someone, laughing quietly at something I didn't get to see. I asked, "Who's that?" And she just said, "Nobody," without even blinking. I knew better. A song came on that she liked. I could tell by the way her head perked up. She slid out of the booth with a smooth, practiced move, turned to me and said, "I'll be right back," already heading toward the dance floor. She didn't ask me to come with her. Didn't even give me that fake little tug of the hand couples do when they want to make it look like they're in sync. She just left, and I sat there, alone in a sea of noise and colored lights, beer sweating in my hand, stomach sinking deeper by the second. I didn't look for her right away. I told myself I was overthinking it, that we were just off tonight, that maybe the drinks would kick in and we'd find our way back to each other. But even as I told myself that, I didn't believe it. I finished my beer and didn't order another. Just watched the crowd move like a tide in front of me, looking for the spot where she'd disappeared. Part of me hoped I wouldn't find her. Part of me knew exactly where she was. And when I finally saw her, when I spotted the way her body moved through the crowd, how she angled toward someone taller, someone with just enough shine to catch her attention, it all started making sense. I'd been wrong about this night from the start. She didn't bring me here to reconnect. She brought me here to let go. She was easy to spot in the crowd. Not because she was the loudest or the flashiest, but because I knew her movements like I knew my own breath. There was a rhythm to her body when she danced, a looseness like gravity didn't apply the same way to her. And tonight, she moved like she didn't have a care in the world. Like I wasn't sitting 20 feet away watching her give pieces of herself to a stranger. He was tall, maybe 6'4", and had that overgroomed look. Hair slicked back too neatly, a button-down shirt rolled at the sleeves just enough to show off his forearms. He had a drink in one hand, the other resting casually on her waist, like they'd done this before. Maybe they had. That was the kind of thought I'd started having lately. Not just wondering if something was going on, but when it started and how many times I'd missed it. I didn't move, just sat there like a fool with my back straight and my heart pounding, eyes locked on the two of them while I sipped the last of my warm beer. Her smile was different around him, freer, brighter, the kind that used to be reserved for me in the beginning. Now it was his, just like that. She leaned in to say something to him, her hand resting lightly on his chest for balance, or maybe just for show. He said something back, and she laughed. Loud enough that I heard it even over the music. That laugh wasn't for me anymore either. I could have looked away. Should have, probably. But I needed to see it. Needed to absorb every detail like it was evidence in a case I hadn't admitted I was building. The way her body leaned into his, how his hands didn't drift but stayed. Right there on her waist, right there in that space that used to feel like mine. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't out of control. She was just gone. Checked out, signed off, moved on. And I was still here, trying to catch up. I don't know how long I sat like that. Could have been minutes, could have been an hour. Time doesn't really work right when your stomach is caving in and your throat is dry from more than just the beer. It was like I was watching a movie, and somehow I was both the main character and the audience, waiting for a twist that never came. That's when someone slid into the seat next to me. I didn't even notice her at first. I was too locked in on the dance floor. But then I caught the perfume, something familiar, soft and citrusy, and turned my head. It was her friend. The one who had always been in our orbit but never too close. Not cold, not warm either. I couldn't tell if she was there by coincidence or if she'd been keeping tabs on me the whole time. "Rough night?" she asked, voice low enough that it barely cut through the music. I didn't answer, just raised an eyebrow and looked back toward the dance floor. She followed my gaze. I watched her take it in, the scene, the body language, the betrayal hidden in plain sight. "She's been distant for a while now," she said finally. "I figured it would come to this." I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? "Thanks for the confirmation." "She invited me here," she added, stirring the ice in her drink with her straw. "Said it'd be fun. Said you two needed a night out. But I don't think this was about fun." That made me look at her. She met my eyes, no smirk, no judgment, just a kind of tired understanding. "You don't have to stay," she said. I almost laughed. "Yeah? And go where?" "Anywhere but here," she said, like it was the simplest thing in the world. "Come on, let's get out of this mess. You don't deserve to be the one watching this happen to you." And for a second, I just stared at her, because what she said, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some offer loaded with subtext. It was just an outstretched hand, a way out, and I realized I needed it more than I'd admitted to myself. I looked back toward the floor one last time. She was still there, my girlfriend, my maybe not anymore girlfriend, dancing like I didn't exist. Her back was turned to me, laughing into his ear, her hand now resting on his shoulder like it belonged there. She wasn't thinking about me, not for a second. I could have vanished and she wouldn't have noticed until someone reminded her she'd come with someone. "Yeah," I said finally. "Okay." The friend smiled. Not big, not victorious, just enough to say she was glad I said yes. We stood up quietly, no drama, no stares. Nobody even noticed. We slid out through the back, past the bathrooms, through a side door that led to an alley soaked in moonlight and cigarette butts. The moment we stepped outside, the noise of the bar collapsed behind us like a closed book. The cool air hit my face and I realized I hadn't really been breathing inside. I filled my lungs for the first time in what felt like hours and looked up at the sky, wondering how a night could turn so fast. Wondering how long I'd been fooling myself into thinking she was still in it with me. We didn't speak right away. We just walked, slowly, toward the parking lot at the edge of the building. My car sat under a flickering streetlight, dust on the hood, a crack in the windshield that I kept forgetting to fix. It looked tired. I felt the same. "You okay?" she asked. I shrugged. Define okay. She didn't push. Just waited while I unlocked the door and slid into the driver's seat. She got in on the passenger side like it was the most natural thing in the world. No one texted. No one called. Not yet. And when I started the engine and pulled away from that bar, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. She wanted fire? Well, she lit the match. But I wasn't the one who got burned. The city blurred past the windows, washed in orange streetlight and shadows that danced across the dashboard. I didn't know where I was going. I just kept driving. Left turn, then right, then straight through a light that turned yellow a little too fast. She didn't say anything about it. She didn't ask where we were headed or what we were doing. That silence between us felt like the first honest thing I'd experienced in weeks. There was something calming about not pretending anymore. About not reaching for a version of us that had stopped existing a long time ago. I hadn't realized how heavy it was. Carrying all that doubt, all that effort, every day. The mental gymnastics, the guessing game, the cold distance disguised as routine. I used to tell myself it was just a phase, that things would get better. They always did, right? But now, sitting beside someone who wasn't filling the air with apologies or excuses or forced conversation, I felt lighter, not healed, not even close, but free in a way that hurt and helped at the same time. We ended up on some back road outside the city, headlights slicing through the dark as the last bits of Seattle faded behind us. The highway signs didn't mean anything, just symbols and numbers pointing toward places I didn't care about. All that mattered was that we were moving, that we weren't sitting back there, watching someone else decide how our story ended. She adjusted the seat, kicking off her shoes and tucking her legs under her like she'd done this drive 100 times. "You ever just keep going until you feel like stopping?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded. "I think that's what I'm doing right now." She didn't press further, and I appreciated that. Some people ask questions just to fill the silence. She didn't. She let the quiet stretch, let it breathe, and somehow that made everything feel a little less chaotic. At some point, we passed a stretch of trees, their bare branches scratching the night sky. That's when I realized how long it had been since I'd really looked at anything. For weeks, maybe longer, I'd been stuck in my head, in that loop of trying to fix something I didn't break, trying to reach someone who didn't want to be reached. The friend, her name was Rachel, I remembered now, leaned her head against the window and said, almost to herself, "She's been different for a while. Not just with you, with everyone." That caught me off guard. "You noticed?" She nodded without turning. "Hard not to. She stopped showing up to things, stopped talking about you. Even when she did, it was like you were a problem to be solved, not someone she loved." I stared at the road, gripping the wheel a little tighter. Why didn't anyone say anything? Rachel finally turned to me, her eyes tired but honest. "Would you have listened?" I didn't answer, because she was right. I probably wouldn't have. I'd have made excuses, defended her, said we were just going through something, that we were solid, that she just needed space. I was so deep in denial I didn't see what was right in front of me. Or maybe I saw it and just didn't want to believe it. Eventually, we found a diner, one of those old, flickering signs promising open 24 hours like it was some kind of refuge. It sat next to an abandoned car wash and a half-lit gas station. Like time had just forgotten this corner of the map. I pulled into the lot and parked without saying anything. Rachel just gave a small nod, like she was silently approving the choice. Inside, it smelled like burnt coffee, bleach, and the kind of greasy food that sticks to your skin. The place was mostly empty. A couple truckers, a young couple half asleep in a booth, and a waitress who looked like she'd been working since the place opened. We slid into a booth near the window, and Rachel grabbed 2 menus without asking. I didn't even look at mine. She ordered waffles and eggs. I asked for coffee, and when the waitress looked at me with raised eyebrows, I added toast so she wouldn't judge me for just nursing caffeine like a man unhinged. When the food came, Rachel dug in like she hadn't eaten in days. I watched her for a second, then looked out the window at the dark stretch of road beyond the lot. I could feel my phone vibrating in my jacket pocket. I didn't check it. "You going to answer that?" she asked between bites. "Nope," I said without looking at her. She nodded like she understood. "You know she's probably not even wondering where you are." I didn't want to believe that. I didn't want to believe the woman I'd spent years building a life with was already forgetting me while her drink still sat half full on the bar. But deep down, I knew Rachel was right. "I don't think she ever planned on going home with me," I said, finally wrapping my hands around the mug of coffee like it was the only thing keeping me upright. "I think she brought me there as a cover, like I was the alibi she needed." Rachel didn't argue. She just wiped her mouth with a napkin and said, "Yeah, that tracks." There was no venom in her voice. No "I told you so," just a resigned sadness. The kind that comes from watching someone you care about spiral and knowing you can't stop them. I looked at her for a long time, trying to read her face. "Why'd you come over to me tonight?" She shrugged. "Because I've watched you stand by her too many times. And tonight was the first time I saw you give up. I figured. Maybe you needed someone to sit with you while you figured out what comes next." That hit me harder than I expected. Because she wasn't wrong. I had given up. Not in the dramatic, storm-out kind of way, but in the quiet, internal kind. The kind where you realize you've been holding onto a rope that's already frayed at both ends. We didn't stay long after that. I left a 20 on the table even though the bill wasn't that high. Rachel didn't say anything when I dropped her off at her place. Just gave me a quiet look that said more than any goodbye could. When I got home, the house was dark, empty. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, listening to the silence wrap itself around me. Then I checked my phone. 7 missed calls. 3 texts. Her name lit up the screen. I didn't open them. I already knew what they'd say. And for once, I didn't care. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark. Could have been minutes, could have been an hour. Time felt slippery, like it didn't want to stick around for whatever came next. My phone buzzed again on the coffee table, the screen lighting up with her name like it was mocking me. I let it ring, again, and again. I wasn't ready to hear her voice. Not the version she'd be using now. The one laced with fake concern and manufactured softness. She'd probably start with, "Where are you?" Like she hadn't spent the last few hours pretending I didn't exist. Eventually I moved. Not because I had anywhere to go, but because I needed to do something that wasn't sitting in the silence. I wandered into the kitchen and flicked on the light. The brightness made me wince. Everything looked too clean, too familiar. The fridge still had our stupid little magnets. One from that trip to Cannon Beach we took when we were still pretending to be happy. Another that spelled out, "You plus me equals always," like it was a fact instead of a joke. I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. My reflection in the window stared back at me. Tired eyes, jaw clenched, the kind of man who'd stayed in something too long out of loyalty, or pride, or fear. Maybe all 3. I finally picked up my phone and opened the messages. I didn't read them in full. Just let my eyes skim over the desperation as it unfolded in real time. "Where did you go? Can we talk, please? You're being dramatic." It didn't mean anything. "Mark, answer me. I need to explain." There it was. The line that pissed me off more than anything else. I need to explain. Like what I saw wasn't what I saw. Like the way she melted into that guy's arms was something I'd misunderstood. Like her laughing and spinning and touching and ignoring me was just a bad read on my part. She was gonna tell me it wasn't what it looked like. That it was innocent. That she was drunk, or sad, or trying to feel alive again. I could already hear the script. I turned my phone off and left it on the counter. Around 2 in the morning, the doorbell rang. I froze for a second, pulse thudding in my throat. I didn't move right away, just stood there staring down the hallway, half expecting her voice to come floating in through the mail slot like some ghost from a version of my life that had finally died. Then came the knock. Harder this time. "Mark, it's me. Please open the door." Her voice was muffled, but I'd know it anywhere. I didn't move, didn't answer. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, waiting to see what she'd do next. "Please," she said again, quieter now. "We need to talk." I didn't owe her anything. Not an audience, not forgiveness, not another ounce of energy. But I also wasn't the kind of guy who could pretend she wasn't there. So I walked to the door and opened it, but I didn't step aside to let her in. She stood there in the porch light, arms wrapped around herself, still in the same dress from earlier. Her mascara had smudged under her eyes, and her lips trembled just enough to make it seem like she was about to cry. I didn't say anything, just stared at her. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I waited a beat, then nodded once and stepped aside. She slipped past me, slow and unsure, like she was walking into a stranger's house. She stood in the middle of the living room, her eyes scanning the space like something might have changed since she last left. I followed her in but kept my distance. "I didn't know what you were going to do," she said, turning to face me. "You just disappeared. Figured I'd give you what you clearly wanted," I said, my voice flat. She flinched like I'd hit her. "That's not fair, isn't it? I didn't mean for it to happen like that. It was just a dance. He was just—" "Don't lie," I said, calm, quiet, but absolute. "Please, just don't insult me with lies." She looked down, her lip trembling. "I messed up. I know I did. But I wasn't trying to hurt you." I almost laughed. That line again. Like all betrayals come with that same disclaimer. I didn't mean to. As if intention undoes impact. As if my stomach hadn't dropped through the floor the second I saw her touch him like that. "You brought me there," I said, stepping forward, not yelling, just making sure she couldn't escape it. "You brought me to that bar so you could pretend. So you could feel good about doing whatever the hell you planned on doing. I was your cover story." "No, Mark, no," she said quickly, reaching for me. I stepped back. "Don't." Her hands fell to her sides. The silence between us stretched so long it started to hum. "I don't know what's been happening to us," she said after a while. I feel like we've been going through the motions. And tonight, I guess I wanted to feel something again." "You didn't want to feel something with me." Her eyes welled up. "I'm sorry." I let those words sit in the air. I didn't respond. They weren't enough. Not anymore. "I think I should go," she said finally, voice cracking. I nodded once. No fight left. No last-ditch efforts. She moved to the door, paused with her hand on the knob, and whispered, "I didn't mean for you to find out like that." I didn't answer. I didn't owe her that comfort. She left. The door clicked shut behind her like the punctuation at the end of a sentence I hadn't wanted to finish. I stood there for a moment, listening to the silence press in from all sides, heavier than it had any right to be. No more knocking, no more crying, no more pretending. She was gone. I didn't move right away. My body didn't want to. My hands hung at my sides like they didn't know what to do anymore. Like they had spent too long holding on to something that wasn't there. I stared at the door like it might open again, not because I wanted her to come back. I didn't. But because part of me still couldn't believe it was over. Not just the night. Everything. I walked back into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on my knees, head in my hands. My phone still sat on the counter, dark and silent. I didn't touch it. There was nothing left to say. Whatever message she sent next, the last attempt, the last thread, would land in a space I had already abandoned. That chapter was closed. No amount of regret could reopen it. Outside, the sky was starting to pale at the edges, the kind of blue that hints at morning without fully committing. I hadn't slept, but I didn't feel tired. Just empty, but not the hollow, aching kind. More like the first deep breath after dragging yourself out of a burning room. I eventually made my way upstairs. Her scent still lingered on the pillow, subtle and cruel. I stripped the sheets, not out of anger, just necessity. I needed this house to stop whispering her name. I tossed the linens in the hamper and opened a window. Let the cold creep in. After a shower, I got dressed and stood at the mirror, studying my reflection like I might find answers there. I didn't. Just a guy who stayed too long, tried too hard, and finally decided enough was enough. I didn't look broken. I didn't look strong either. Just real. Raw. A little older than the last time I looked. A little wiser, maybe. A little more done. Later that morning, I drove to Rachel's place. I didn't text first. I didn't even know what I was going to say. I just knew I needed to see someone who had been there, who had seen the truth and didn't flinch. When she opened the door, she looked surprised, but not confused. "Hey," she said quietly, stepping aside to let me in. Her apartment smelled like coffee and something warm, vanilla maybe. A record was spinning softly in the corner, some slow, acoustic thing that felt like it belonged in the background of the moment. I sat on her couch while she poured us 2 mugs without asking. She handed me one and settled across from me, tucking her feet under her. "She came by," I said finally. "I figured," Rachel replied. "She texted me." I looked up. What did she say? That she messed up. That she doesn't know what she was thinking. That she hopes you'll forgive her. I sipped the coffee, let the warmth spread through me, then nodded. She always hopes things will fix themselves. Rachel studied me for a long moment. "And you? What do you hope?" It was a good question. One I hadn't really asked myself. For so long, I'd been hoping for things to go back to what they were. Hoping she'd see me again. Hoping I could feel like enough. But now, hope felt different. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Peace, maybe. Something real. Someone who doesn't make me feel like a background character in my own life." Rachel didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "That's not too much to ask." "No," I said. "It really isn't." She leaned forward slightly, her voice careful. "Do you want to stay here for a bit?" I didn't answer right away, but something in me eased at the offer. Not because I was looking for a replacement. Not because I needed to be rescued. But because sometimes healing starts with quiet company. Someone who sees you not as a project or a placeholder, but just sees you. "Yeah," I said. "I think I do." The next few days were quiet. Not empty, just still. I stayed in Rachel's spare room, went to work like normal, kept my head down. She didn't ask for anything, didn't dig or push. We just existed in the same space, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe without waiting for the other shoe to drop. I got a few more messages from her. The girl I used to love. The one who let me sit alone in a bar while she danced with someone else. They started out desperate, then turned bitter, then quiet. I never responded. Not once. Not because I didn't have things to say, but because I finally understood the power of silence. One night, maybe a week after everything, Rachel and I sat on her little balcony, sipping wine in mismatched hoodies. The air was crisp, the city humming softly below. "I saw her today," Rachel said, not looking at me. "At the grocery store." "Yeah." She looked lost, not sad, not angry, just like someone who realized too late that they'd broken something they can't put back together. I nodded slowly. "Sounds about right. I think she expected you to come crawling back. She doesn't know me as well as she thought." Rachel turned to me then, her eyes meeting mine in the dark. "No, she really doesn't." And just like that, I felt it. That shift. The weight I'd been carrying. The anger, the hurt, the confusion. It lifted. Not all at once, but enough to make room for something else. Something lighter. Something new. A few days later, I packed up what was left of my stuff at the house. There wasn't much I wanted. Couple books. Some clothes. I left the shared memories behind. The framed photos, the little notes on the fridge. Let her deal with them. Before I left, I snapped a photo of the empty living room. Just for me. Not to hold on to the pain, but to remember the line I crossed. The moment I walked out, not because I lost something, but because I finally chose myself. I sent her that photo. No caption. No explanation. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. That silence said everything. And for the first time in years, I was finally free.